Hello, I'm City Commissioner Kyle Thompson. The fear, anxiety, and renewed sense of patriotism experienced after the 9/11 attacks had not been felt so personally in this country since the 1941 attack of Pearl Harbor. On this, the 20th anniversary of September 11th, 2001, we reflect and remember. I'm joined today by Lieutenant Scott Maxwell, retired, of the New York City Fire Department. My colleagues on the Frankfort City Commission and I, and Mayor Lane Wilkerson, have honored the bravery and heroism of our fellow countrymen with a special proclamation proclaiming today, September 11th, 2021, as American Public Service Heroes Day. As part of that commemoration, we've invited Lieutenant Maxwell to join us for a conversation about his personal story. Thank you so much for being here today, Lieutenant Maxwell, and thank you again for your service to our country. Lieutenant Maxwell, you were on duty on September 11th and all the days thereafter during the rescue and recovery mission. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to become, I know first a firefighter and a police officer and then a firefighter with New York, and just give us a little intro to yourself.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell the story of New York City Fire Department from a personal point of view. Not too many people are around that can do that. So here is a good chance for me to actually tell the story of what really happened that day and how we handled it. The reason that I can answer these questions is I was working that day. I'd recently been promoted to lieutenant, and I got promoted out of the Bronx out of special operations and was working covering. I was working in a firehouse that I had never worked in before as a lieutenant, and I was only 43, with 12 years, on the job. Anyway, I worked a 24-hour tour in this firehouse in Brooklyn, 219 and 105, 219 engine and 105 truck. 24-hour tour. I started at 6 o'clock the night before 9/11, and I was scheduled to work until 6 o'clock the very next day, 24 hours. When we work these types of tours, people come and go at 9 a.m. because we work two separate tours that we hook together to make 24s. Anyway, I always wanted to be a fireman. I remember sitting on the curb outside of my grandfather's delicatessen in Long Island, watching the volunteer fire departments parade by at 5 years old, saying that's what I wanted to do. And I kept to that thought all through my high school days. You can see in my high school yearbook, it says, good luck being a fire captain in the Bronx, watch out for flying bricks, all kinds of different things. Anyway, I always had the calling to be a fireman. I just always wanted to do it. I got kicked out of the same college twice. It wasn't for me. My job was to work as a fireman, which is basically, for people that don't know, it's like high school without homework. The camaraderie, the adventure, the fun, it's worth every minute of it. You don't even think about what could happen to you, but you do it anyway.
So a lot of people probably wonder what the connection is here, and I'll give them a little bit of background, and you add on to this. My wife and I were in New York City at the last day of June through July 4th weekend, and so we decided on July 2nd, I think it was, we went to the 9/11 memorial, and of course we had always heard you got to go to the 9/11 memorial. Everybody said you got to go to the 9/11 memorial, so we made sure that we carved out time and we did that. And so no matter how you prepare yourself for what you're going to see in there, you're not ready. I mean, you're just not ready for what you see. And I was alive during that when that happened. I saw things that happened, but to see the presentation of the museum and the memorial is, I mean, it just takes your breath away, the first time you see it. As someone from the outside living in a small town in Kentucky. And when we walked through the museum portion, which if folks have never been there, it's actually on below ground. It's you go 5 stories below ground.
5 stories.
5 stories, which is actually where the structure was held for one of the towers, right? That's actually where the parking structure was at some point. And so you're underground, and then they have the museum portion, and you have no idea how big the museum portion is. It doesn't look that big, but you walk into these glass enclosures and you think you're seeing everything in the memorial, and then there's this museum portion you walk in. That's where you need to be. That's the takeaway. And
it's 10 acres, the whole site.
It is. It's enormous. It's unbelievable. And so Jen and I are walking through, and when you first walk in, you look to your right, there is a floor to ceiling picture of the Twin Towers that is high res, and it says the date and time, and it's 5 minutes before the first plane hits. And it obviously it looks like a beautiful September morning. But behind you on a TV that you don't see yet is Katie Couric and Matt Lauer talking about a plane has just flown into the World Trade Center. And at that point, it's the full broadcast. So you remember, that happening from someone watching from the outside. And all of a sudden the emotions get to you that this really happened. Even though you're 2 decades removed from it, these things happened. And as Jen and I are walking through the memorial, we're looking at the different things, and very early on we hear this thick New York accent. He's not cussing or anything, but he's using that thick New York accent, not talking real loud, but definitely talking to some folks and showing the days of the event. And I remember I remember distinctly the minute I heard your voice for the first time. You were talking about the dispatch telex printout. It's like a bubble printer that the things used to come across, an old IBM bubble printer. And you were explaining, this is what this shows is all of the different ladders, companies that were sent out. And as you can see, it's just numbers, and this is each truck that's going out. And at that point, I look over and I see you're wearing a shirt that had the FDNY number 3 on it. And I lean over to Jen and I say, I think this guy was there. And I'm not saying anything about your age or that you matched the qualifications for that, but you seem to know a lot about what was going on.
I didn't turn gray till they dropped 210-story buildings on my head. That's the truth.
I understand completely. And then I remember you turning to there was a video that was looped, and it was raw video that French documentary company had been filming that day to learn about the fire department of New York. And any of the stuff that you see on those documentaries now probably came from that film crew. They decided to ride along. And at that point, I realized not only were you possibly there, you probably worked there. And so we decided that we were just gonna follow quietly behind you and listen, no matter where you went, mainly because this was kind of awe-inspiring. It was something that we knew you didn't work there. We knew you were doing this on your own. But then when you started talking about things that actually happened that day, and you said, the guy on the screen here, he's my commander. You can see him putting his gear on. He's getting ready to go in. I had that moment in my life where I can distinctly remember talking to people who served in World War II when I was a kid. And it was greater than that, because this was a tragedy that happened while I was alive. And just to be in your presence was amazing. But then you were so humble. You didn't care that we were listening. You were very welcoming. You were happy to let me shake your hand and get to know you. So that is how we met. And then when we got back to the hotel, I started doing a little research on you. First of all, you told me your name when I shook your hand. And so I wanted to look, who's this? Did this guy serve for real? Because you in this world, you want to see the people you meet, you want to hear their stories. And not only did I find out that you were there, you were a brave hero that served that day, but you served for many, many years, 24, I believe you told me. And I was so taken aback by the people, when I posted your picture and tagged you in it, the people that know you personally from all over the world. I mean, there were people in Arizona and California and Washington and Florida, where apparently you spend some time in Florida. Everyone talked about what an amazing human you were beyond just being a hero as a
I send out a
firefighter.
lot of Christmas cards.
I know you do. I know you do. And and so when I learned that, I genuinely wanted to figure out a way that I could introduce you to the folks in Frankfort, everybody, even the folks that I don't know, because that I wanted to give them just a glimpse of the honor that I had in meeting you. So that was how all of this came about. And I really think that folks that have not met somebody that served there and not heard those stories don't genuinely have a perspective of what actually happened. We saw it on the TV. We saw what happened, and we were 1,000 miles away, and we heard all the things on television, but it wasn't real. And hearing your stories made it real. So, Lieutenant, tell me a little bit about the day, how the day started, and what happened with regard to when you got the call and things. That you told me a funny story while we were there, that you all were actually diverted and came along that way, correct?
Correct. Like I said, I was working with a crew that I had never met before. I came from the Bronx, and I was working in Brooklyn. And each borough operates a little bit differently. You have to remember the size of the New York City Fire Department. You know, there's 225 engine companies. There's 176 ladder companies. I worked in special operations in a rescue company. Rescue company, our job is to watch out after firemen. There's one in each borough. Rescue 1's in Manhattan, Rescue 2's in Brooklyn, Rescue 3 covers the Bronx and Harlem, Rescue 4 is in Queens, Rescue 5 is in Staten Island. So the size of, there's 11,000 New York City firemen altogether. The New York City Police Department has 35,000 members. The 5th largest standing army in the world is the New York City Police Department. So that kind of puts it in perspective. So when you get promoted, they take you out of your comfort zone and they put you into another borough, so you get to experience different parts of the city. So I was working in Brooklyn. I'm a young lieutenant. I had worked 6 years already. Started off in a ladder company, and I interviewed and went to work in special operations, and I got into Squad 41 in the Bronx, which is just similar to a rescue company, but more of a light rescue company, I would say. I'm working in 219 engine for a friend of mine who lives in my town that I've known forever. I'm covering his vacation. He's on vacation. I'm covering his spot. So I don't even know the guys I'm working with. We have a pretty easy night. And in the morning, we had a couple of runs, no real big fires, just ran around a little bit. In the morning, that's when we were having coffee about 8 o'clock. The engine company shares the office with the ladder company. So the ladder company's officer is a guy named Vinnie Brunton. He came in for to work the day tour, and we're having coffee, and he's looking over at me like, who's this covering officer? Yeah, yada, yada, yada. Does he have any idea what's going on? Does he know what he's doing? But the funny part about the New York City Fire Department is your reputation precedes you, right? So they knew that I got promoted out of special operations. They know that I'd been to a ton of fires in my career and technical rescues. So they kind of went easy on me. And Vinnie Brunton, I had to, at that morning before the planes hit, I had 2 extra members coming in that day, and I had to detail them out. All right. So certain amount of guys are supposed to come in, and you only have to have 6 guys, it's 5 guys and an officer. So I happen to have 8 guys. All the groups were filled. And so I had to send two guys out. One of them was going over to the truck. We call that across the floor. So he was going from engine 219 to work in ladder 105 that day. And then we had another person who was going to have to go to another firehouse. This is all before the planes hit. I'm having coffee. I'm getting to know Vinny a little bit. And we're talking about what's going to happen for the day. And, how do I like, it's a great firehouse that I was working in, really is phenomenal. Dean Street and Flatbush Avenue. As we're talking, our tour starts at 9:00. That's what roll call is. At 8:42, the first plane hits. So we're watching the TV in the office and we're kind of still chatting, but now we're kind of looking because we thought at first it was a small plane that might have crossed, into the building or whatever. And we could hear over the department radio, Manhattan companies sending out a 5th alarm assignment, which is probably the whole Frankfort Fire Department, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
5th alarm assignment is probably 20 engines, 10 trucks, and all the special operations units that go along with it. So they respond to the trade center. I show Vinny the riding list that I have for the day because I have to send somebody across the floor. And the person that was supposed to go across the floor was a brand new firefighter named Regina Wilson, who didn't have enough time to go over into the truck. So Vinny said, no, you got to keep Regina, who was a female. And he picked the person to go across. So he picked that person and then he picked the other person that was going to take the flyer. And he basically left me with a senior chauffeur. The guy had probably the same amount of time on the job as I did. And what we call probies. The people on the back of the truck all had a year or two on the job. They were brand new.
Wow.
It was very interesting. And I didn't know who they were. So now I'm kind of introducing myself to these people. And the second plane hits. Now they're calling over all the Brooklyn companies are going to go because they've drained pretty much all the Manhattan companies for the first plane. And they start calling all the Brooklyn companies. So we get the call, 105 gets the call. There's about 10 different rigs. We all jump on the fire truck. Regina now is with me, not across the floor. And we start heading to the Brooklyn Bridge. As we're heading to the Brooklyn Bridge, I get a call on the radio. This never happens. Being redirected to another building in Brooklyn for a report of a fire. So now I'm in line with about 10 other fire trucks heading towards the Brooklyn Bridge, and I have to peel off and go to this building, which is first due in our district. It's this big bank. It's an iconic bank. I run in, the guy's like, no, it's just smoke blowing from across the river. Go. So I run out and I am now maybe 3.5 minutes behind the rest of the crew. I don't know where I'm going. I'm in Brooklyn. I'm a Bronx guy. My chauffeur, luckily, is experienced, and he said, okay, we're closer to the tunnel now, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, than the bridge. So let's head for the tunnel. We head for the tunnel. We're all by ourselves. We get to the tunnel. We're flying through the tunnel. Cops now have everybody stopped at the other end. Everybody's coming out of the tunnel. We're going in towards the Trade Center. The Brooklyn Battery Tunnel comes out about 400 or 500 yards short of the South Tower. That's where on West Street. So just as we are about to come out of the tunnel, the South Tower collapses. Just as we poke out of the tunnel, everything goes black. I come from special operations. I feel like they've hit the tunnels. They kept telling us they were going to hit the tunnels, and I'm waiting for this giant whoosh of water to come and kill us. Doesn't come, but you can't see anything. Everything went completely black. We have 2 radios. One that we have on the fire truck where I can speak to the borough that I'm in. So I had switched from Brooklyn to Manhattan, so they knew I was coming. And then we have handy talkies that we could talk to each other on at the fire scene. Both radios went completely silent. Not only that, but we couldn't see anything. We're just right coming out of the tunnel onto West Street. We're sitting there waiting for, like I said, not knowing exactly what happened. All of a sudden, the radio starts to crackle to life. Now we understand that building collapsed. We're getting reports from people in the other building or the firefighters. We can't listen to the cops. We don't talk to the cops. We speak totally different languages at fires. The South Tower has collapsed. I jump out of the rig and it starts to be more gray now as the dust starts to settle. When you watch these dust clouds, it takes a while for them to settle. It probably took 10 or 15 minutes for me to be able to get out. I don't know how long it took exactly, but I knew I was scared. We got out of the fire truck and I started walking in front of the fire truck because people now are running for their lives to get through the tunnel to get away from this collapsed building, whoever survived. We're walking up to West Street. We make a right on West Street and we're continuing down West Street, that 400 yards. And now I can see that the building had collapsed and it had damaged the South Tower or the South overpass where we had to get past. So I stopped the rig about 100 yards south of the overpass, and I collect my guys, and I'm standing behind the fire truck, and I'm explaining to them that we have to now grab this tool, that tool. We're not going to be able to make it. I don't know exactly what we're going to do. I'm not hearing anything on the radio as far as command goes, but start collecting these tools, and then we're gonna walk the last 100 yards and get to work. I used to coach. I was a pretty good lacrosse coach in my day. And I remember that I always kept my players back to the game so they would concentrate on me and not what's going around them. I'm watching the North Tower and I'm watching the people come out of the North Tower and fall that tragic amount of distance and hit the ground. Which was not really too far from where we were standing. So as I'm watching the people come out of the building and I'm watching the fire in the North Tower, I instruct my guys and we take half a step towards the North Tower and it just collapses above me. I'm able to corral my team and we dove under the fire truck, literally under the tailboard of the fire truck. And as we're under there, it took probably 2.5 seconds, but pieces of the North Tower are actually hitting the fire truck, pieces of steel and rubble, and it was just sounded like a train going off the tracks. That's the only way I can explain it. It was just an unbelievably large rumble, and you could feel the rig collapse. Boom, 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 boom. As it's coming down on us, it probably took over a minute for all the debris to fall. I can remember the chauffeur is yelling, "Pray, pray, pray." And I'm just trying to find my face piece at this point. Somebody was laying on my face piece to my air tank, so I couldn't get it. And I just stuck my face inside my coat and thought that I was going to die. Now, my service friends will tell you this. Would you honestly think that this is it and you're going to die? A very serene feeling comes over you. It's almost, it's hard to explain. It's like, it's okay. Well, that ended very quickly when I realized that I'm not dead, but I still can't see because we're covered in debris. Fire truck is covered in debris. The back end, not so much because it didn't fall over the fire truck so much behind us. It was mostly in front of us. I start calling out the guys. Who's here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have all my guys. We lay there for another 10 minutes. Radio silence. You have to understand, a big fire scene, there's a lot of chatter going on. There's a lot of communication between the firemen. Nothing, nowhere, absolutely not a sound. We dig our way out from behind the fire truck. We know now that both buildings are collapsed, and we know that we just survived and had to figure out now a new game plan because there is nobody talking on the radio. It was very possible that we could have been the only people out of the over 200 fire trucks that were there that could have survived this. At that point, we didn't know. We had no idea. Collect my guys. We now have to walk around the scene all the way past these buildings. Now, if you're a fireman, you'll understand that when there is a building on fire, you're focused on what you have to do. I've never in my life walked around an area like this where every building was on fire. Even the 2 blocks away that we had to walk to get into the scene, to get around the debris, there was 2, 3, 4 floors of fire in these buildings. And there was nothing that we could do about it. We were pretty much on our own. As we're walking, you could start to hear the radio crackle back to life. You could start to hear that other guys had survived and where they are. You could start hearing calls for help. We started to get back into emergency mode other than survival mode. So as we got back to the West overpass, I can remember standing there with my guys covered in dust, looking at 2 giant piles of buildings that is now probably 20 stories high, and every building around us has been affected, is either on fire or has had giant pieces of debris taken out of it, or it's surreal pictures. When I do my tours of this, I like to stand people out front first and show them exactly where they're standing and what was there prior to what's there now. I remember saying to one of the young guys, now here's the beauty of working with all young guys. They will go anywhere you lead them. I remember saying, okay, we have what we need. I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to try to find somebody who's in charge. And I stopped and I turned around and I said, and I can't guarantee we're going to come out of this alive. And I meant it. I remember one of the guys turns around, looks me right square in the eye and says, let's go. At that point, I felt like I had a crew that I could trust. We're now connected by history. So as we go in towards West Street, we find 279 engine, which has been flattened, but is still connected to a hydrant that's operating. We thought the best thing we could do at that point was take a hose line off the back of that fire truck and start putting the fires out that were around us, because everything was on fire. Everything was covered by debris. All the cars were covered by debris. They were exploding. There was debris flying over your head, flaming car pieces. There was attack helicopters flying, hovering over our heads. There was fighter jets screaming over our heads. And it was war. It was literally, we fought the first battle of World War III.
Was there anyone at 279 when you got there?
The chauffeur from 279 was standing on top of the rig, and he was just shooting his deck gun into whatever fires. And he had a very strange look in his face. He had a million-mile stare in his face. Mm-hmm. And I tried to get him to come down, and he wouldn't come down off the deck Turns out his brother was killed that day. Firefighting is a very a lot of you do it because your father did it, or your uncle did it, or your family did it. I did it because I just loved it. We lost so many sets of brothers. We lost a couple of father-son. We lost 343 firemen that day. 2,977 people altogether. It's an incredible amount of life that was lost in one foul swoop. And our job now was to find the survivors and return them to their families, which is an awesome task to be. So 279, we started started to run out of water with that hydrant. So I had my guys stretch a supply line all the way back to a fireboat, which was in the harbor. Well, right. It's not too far away. It's only about 500 yards away, but they had to collect every piece of hose, and they were successful at doing that, which was a pretty incredible task, being that we were just one little engine. Now, just to give you an idea of how bad it was, we got redirected for those 3 or 4 minutes. Every one of those 11 companies that we were in line with, every one of those guys were killed. So if we weren't redirected, I definitely would have been killed. I wasn't. I was able to make it that day through incredible, later on that day, 7 World Trade Center collapsed, which is a 45-story building. There was constant shatter of extra attacks coming in. We were hearing all kinds of things, that the Eiffel Tower was hit. We were hearing, we heard some of the true things that happened about the Capitol building and, the Pentagon and other things like that. But you kept hearing that the other shoe was going to drop. So one eye was in the sky waiting for another plane to come land on you. And through the explosions and mayhem, there was an amazing amount of calmness amongst the first responders. Nobody knew who was where or who was killed or what the level of what happened to us. We had no idea. We just had our eyes focused on what we were doing.
Lieutenant Maxwell, one of the things that they have on display as an audio display at the 9/11 Memorial is when you come around a corner, you hear the high pitch squeal of I believe you called them the rescue bells, or the fact that somebody had
pass alarms.
And so one of the firefighters was not moving, and so it immediately goes off because there is an issue. You also told me that when there were things crashing and going on around you, but all you could hear everywhere you went were these pass alarms that were going off. Had you ever experienced anything like that? Could you even comprehend the level of what was happening with regard to the loss of life at that point?
Well, not at that level. What I tell people was that was the worst fire I was ever at. But in 26 years, that's not the only fire I was ever at. And I was trained to a different level. When it's your job to go rescue down firefighters, you hear things that other people don't hear, and you tend to have a bigger picture. Each company is assigned a task, and we know where they're going and what they're doing. When I meet the Frankfort firefighters, they'll all agree with me. Nobody just runs around squirting water on fire. Everybody's trained to do a job. And so was I at that point. Pass alarms are devices that we wear on our masks that if you don't move for 20 seconds, it starts to go off. And there was literally, you could hear pass alarms everywhere, but you couldn't get to them because they were all under an extremely heavy load of debris. So you had to get past that and just try to concentrate on. We did have a couple of instances where firefighters got trapped subsequently. A couple guys in the collapse. Jay Jonas and his bunch from Ladder 6. That's a very famous story. And then a couple of other guys who subsequently with secondary collapses, which took a lot of manpower and a lot of patience to try to do. Now, at that point, every firefighter in the city was mobilized to be there, and the police and PA worker, Port Authority and EMS. So about an hour after the collapse, we started to have some manpower to be able to operate. We unfortunately did not get anybody out except for Jay and a couple of other people who were able to get out. But for the first couple of days, we didn't really find anybody alive.
Lieutenant Maxwell, you've talked and shared a couple of instances that are a little overwhelming. The first of which is you're in the tunnel and you think you're about to get hit with a tidal wave of water. You don't know what's going on, but you hear that the first tower has collapsed. Then moments later, and you still get out of the truck and you keep moving forward. You then are hid under the truck, trying to protect yourselves from flying debris. It probably feels like you're literally at that moment going to die at any second. You gather yourself, you get up, you go to the fire, you keep moving forward. Looking back on it 20 years later, what is it about you and a firefighter and a police officer and public servants that are willing to realize that they may die at any second to provide that ultimate sacrifice and just move forward? What's that mentality?
That's a very interesting question. It's something that's programmed into you. It's something that I guess all humans have in them. You have to tap into it. I was fortunate enough to learn from the absolute best New York City firemen that ever walked the face of the earth. The guys that lived through the war years, the 60s and the 70s, that went to fire after fire with a sense of, these guys taught, you have to depend on your training. You have to depend on your training, and you have to understand that people are depending on you to perform. There is no, if when I was in Rescue 3 and we had a guy hanging off of a bridge or somebody in a building collapse or, scuba, whatever we had to do, there was nobody else coming for you. So you have to have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E. That goes with anything in life. Seriously. You don't have to be a Harvard graduate to be competent at what you do. You have to, you have to be a student of the job. You have to be a student of what you do. You always have to be learning. The day you stop learning at what you do, that's the day you leave it. And one thing that I remember when I got promoted was our instructors telling me, take a little tiny piece of all the lieutenants and officers and firemen that you work with in the past. And I can go through some names, man, I tell you, of guys who have make me look like, honestly. And you take a little piece of all these people and you put them in your little toolbox. And then when it's your turn to perform, you hope that you can do it. If you get killed, you get killed. That's part of it. I wasn't able to contact my wife until almost 2:00 that afternoon. And she didn't think I was going to be there. She thought, oh, he's promoted. He's in Brooklyn. He's safe. He's not going to be there. She had no idea I was there. My dad was a New York City cop, just recently retired. And he had flown. He was going to Las Vegas with my mom, and they put his plane down in Memphis. So he didn't know what happened to me for 30 hours. He walked in front of this motel room in Memphis, Tennessee, paced back and forth for 30 hours. I have a guardian angel. Some people don't believe it. We could do a whole another podcast on it. But I know in the times that I have had to go the extra mile, and there's been, if a cat has 9 lives, I used up 8.5 of them before I finally retired.
Knowing everything after your 26 years of service and everything that you went through, and the fact that you shared with me privately that they had to carry you out on a stretcher to actually get you to retire, would you do it all over again?
Oh, heck yeah. Are you kidding me? I would go back tomorrow. But, I miss the clowns. I don't miss the circus. They're not going to take a 61-year-old guy. My record in Rescue 3 was we went to 11 fires in 24 hours. It takes a toll on you. a lot of firemen don't go to 11 fires in a year. We went to a whole lot. Oh yeah, I would absolutely do it. And I so enjoy getting together with my peers and just getting to talk about the job, playing golf or whatever we do, because we think differently than other people. We act differently than other people. It's not that we're irreverent or foul mouthed or anything else, but we believe things differently than regular people. And it gets me in a little bit of trouble here and there, but mostly people understand,
I think you've earned it at this point. And I think that's absolutely the truth. Looking back 20 years later, as today commemorates the 20th anniversary, what are your emotions with regard to 20 years? Has the feeling that you had moments after the collapse, has that left you at all? Has it waned at all? Or has it become even more nostalgic as you've lost several guys and gals that have passed away over the last 20 years because of issues related to 9/11, whether it's injury or illness. And I think you and I were talking at one point that I think there's only like 26 guys that were part of the 400 firefighters that were on scene, which was at the time, it still is, the largest rescue effort, fire rescue effort in the history of the world.
The largest successful,
yeah. And so the fact that there are so few of you guys left, does that make the anniversary mean something more? And how do you feel when this date comes around each year?
Well, a couple points. When I got home a couple days later, the first person I saw, I was really in bad shape. I couldn't see. My eyes had swollen shut. As soon as I was able to get back, I got back the next day. I was home for about 12 hours. That's a whole nother story. But the first person I sought out when I got home was the guy that handed out towels at my gym. He was a tried and true World War II infantryman who fought in the Battle of the Bulge. This guy was the real deal. He was captured, he escaped, he was captured again. He fought real battles in World War II and was a guy who I really trusted. And so I went to the gym and I'm like, Mike, what the hell am I feeling? What is this? He goes, Scotty, I'm going to tell you, when we fought in World War II, we would advance. And as guys would go down, we would keep advancing until we met our objective. The difference between me and you is now you got to go back and get your guys. If you think about that, nobody has to do that. No military service has to, they take their guys, has to go back for 10 months. And basically we were digging for molars. Whatever we could get back to give to people, to give to their families, not just firemen or cops or other workers that were there, but people that were having a bagel at their desk. Yeah, that's something that no human should ever have to do. That's number one. Number two is 219 lost their whole crew. Vinnie Brunton, the guy that I sent over. Regina survived because Lieutenant Captain Brunton didn't think she had enough time to work in the ladder company that day. She doesn't know that, right? She doesn't know that her life was saved because of a pencil stroke. So they lost all 6 of their members. The company that I got promoted out of, Squad 41, lost all 8 members. The company I worked in, Rescue 3, lost 8 members. In special operations, every company lost every guy, plus extras that were riding because it was a change of tours. Now you got to deal with these families. You have to deal with these wives. It was my job. I had 8 guys in Rescue 3, 8 different families that I had to deal with, plus all the other families of people that I knew. We would work for 24 hours. We would dig for 24 hours. and then we would go to funerals for 24 hours. That's what took the toll on you. To actually have to go and take care of these families and these children that are going to grow up without their dad. We still are dealing with that to this day. And that's a whole nother show. I can tell you, you deal with 8 widows. One of them's glad the son of a bee's dead. 2 of them will never come out of hiding. It's like the gamut. You have to deal with this on a daily basis, every day. And then deal with my own family and my own head. That was the hard part. The physical part is demanding. The mental part, man, it's just hard to tell.
10 years ago, on the 10th anniversary of the attacks, Frankfort, the city of Frankfort, was fortunate enough to bring a piece of steel beam from one of the towers, and they were delivered across the country to small communities. It hangs in our public safety building as an inspiration, a reminder of why each individual serves. I want to ask you, and I asked you this before we went on, these bits of metal have deep significance and reminders as a memorial that all were lost on that day. When you think of the totality of the impact of that day, not just in New York City and the folks that you dealt with, but the grandeur, the enormity of it, what goes through your mind?
Well, the first thing I'm glad is that one of those pieces of metal didn't go through my head. Literally, if I was 2 feet away from where I was standing, I would have been flattened. What goes through my mind is that our country is very special. That I'm sitting here with my New York accent, hanging out with a new friend from Frankfort, Kentucky. People were so good to us and continue to be and should be to all their service people and all their fire and police. This is a great country that we live in. When you speak to people from outside the country, they don't understand how we put our rally caps on and how we circle around each other. We were getting boxes and boxes and boxes every day of handmade things from people all over the place and none of it got thrown away. It all got stored somewhere. The pieces of metal are a reminder that we do good. We do good when we can. And there's no better feeling than going other places because I can be sitting with the president of this or an executive here or there, or sports stars I've met over the years, and they're all interested in what it's like to be a New York City fireman. That's basically, so I think I made a good decision when I was 5, and I'm glad I stuck with it. And I'm glad I'm here today because I can't tell you, I've lost so many of my friends now have all come down with this or that. And, I'm scared that I'm going to die. I don't want to, listen, I'd rather have been flattened that day than die of cancer 20 years later. The fact that I'm here now is amazing. I have a picture I want to send you later on of me walking to a fire in Harlem with 2 guys behind me. The one guy is Danny Foley, just passed away. He's 48 years old, 5 kids. His brother was killed 9/11. He died of pancreatic cancer. And then the other guy over my left shoulder right now is in a coma from a 9/11 heart attack that he just had. He's only 52 or 56 years old. Another guy with 5 kids. Just the fact that I'm here telling you the story, that's why I'm doing it, because I don't know how long I'm going to be able to do it. Anybody who wants to listen, I'll tell a story, because it's not about me. It's about what happened that day. And I know what it smells like, tastes like, feels like to experience that. And 10 years was a great anniversary. 20 years is amazing. I have a grandson now, and I'm not slowing down. My handicap's still a little too high. Golf. You live your life. What would you say to young women
or young men who may be a little older than 5 years old when you made your decision, but maybe in middle school or high school or even college at this point, who are considering careers in public service, in the fire department, the local police department, or even military service, what advice would you offer to them?
It takes a certain type of person. We don't want people who just do it because they want it, they can do it. You have to want to do it. You have to be a student, learn, gain experience. You have to be humble. But I'll tell you what, you save your first baby, you're Superman. We have a saying in the fire service. You have to excuse me. I get choked up when I talk about
I'm getting choked up you talking about it too.
When you're a fireman, like I said, your reputation precedes you. Wherever you go, they know who you are, they know where you worked, they know who you work with. And the biggest compliment you could ever get from somebody else in the fire service is very simple. Yeah, Scotty, he was a good fireman. That's it. Not all the words and all that. We don't throw the word hero around very easily. I work with guys where I was in awe, taking doors off of hinges, using them as shields, saving babies out of cribs. It's hard to explain. You're cutting people out of cars or dangling off of bridges, whatever you have to do. It is the most interesting, exciting, refreshing. You do this job, you could walk, with a little hitch in your step for the rest of your life, even when you can't work so fast.
Lieutenant Maxwell, Scotty, I want to thank you for not only sharing your story, but sharing your story with me, personally. You didn't have to do that. That was humbling to me. The fact that you would take the hour to talk to the citizens of Frankfort is humbling on a different level than I can even describe. After the pandemic's over, we've already talked about the fact that you and your lovely wife we're going to invite you to Frankfort properly. We want you to experience our hospitality in this town. We want you to experience our bourbon, which I know you are a fan of Buffalo Trace. And we want you to share a bit more of your story with our citizens. We've already talked about the fact that you look forward to that, and we will, just be amazed at that opportunity. And we look forward to that day. I can't wait to see my new friend again. And from all of us in the city of Frankfort and all of those who leave the city of Frankfort, I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for your service on 9/11, but I also want to thank you for your 30 years of service to the people of New York and to this country. And the sacrifice that you have made is something that we can never repay, but we are indeed thankful. I want to thank you for sharing so freely of yourself, not just with us, but just with all the people you've talked to since then. When we met, you said, "This is what I do as my coping mechanism. My coping mechanism is to share the story with my friends and take them to the memorial." I can't imagine the feelings you get as you go through there. So I want to thank you. I want to ask that God continues to bless you. I know you are a proud grandpa at this point with that grandson of yours. We are very happy to honor you and your family, not just your immediate family, but your fire, EMS, and police family as well. And I want to thank you deeply for coming on today.
The pleasure was all mine.
And I would like to thank Cable 10, Penny Peevler, all the folks that are assisting at Cable 10, David and Zach and Kathy. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today on 9/11. We hope that you and your family can genuinely take something away from this meeting with Lieutenant Maxwell, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.